Well, I can't say I didn't see this one coming. It looks like the pullout from Afghanistan that Joe Biden so magnanimously announced a couple weeks ago is already unraveling. I hate to see it, but it seems to be going the way that I expected. The U.S. is sending more troops to Afghanistan because they're afraid. You see, they're so scared. Why, we don't know. That the Taliban is going to stop me if you've heard this one before. Attack U.S. troops in the process of retreating and exiting the country. Before September 11th. Now, why would the Taliban do that? Why would the U.S. think, oh, gee, isn't there this peace deal with the Taliban that the Taliban won't harm U.S. troops while they're withdrawing, so that the U.S. can just get out and not deal with the Taliban anymore? Didn't the Taliban agree? And so far, for the last year, totally not engaged in combat with the U.S. And 0 U.S. troops were killed in 2020. Isn't that all true? The answer to that, of course, is yes, but the terms of that deal, negotiated by Zalmay Khalilzad on behalf of Donald Trump, stated that the U.S. would be out of Afghanistan by May the 1st, not September the 11th, 2020, a totally political and strategically meaningless date. Sadly, Joe Biden, despite what the media, characterized, his announcement as, is not going out of his way to try and end the war in Afghanistan and, be the guy who finally brings the troops home. That's not what he's doing at all. What he's doing is needlessly blowing up the deal that was negotiated by Trump, I guess just because Orange Man bad, so we can't follow the terms of his deal. We have to do things our own way. But that ultimately carries a significant risk that if you break the deal with the Taliban says, okay, well, we're no longer bound by the constraints of this deal, and we're going to engage in combat with the U.S. again, and, American troops are going to start getting killed. Now, it's a small number that the Pentagon is sending over to Afghanistan, in response to this. They're only sending 650 troops. However, there's only 2,500 actual official American soldiers in Afghanistan at the moment. So in percentage terms, that's like that's over a 20% increase. Some might even call it a surge in troops. And so what kind of message would this send to the Taliban, who already know that the U.S. is reneging on the original deal to leave May 1st, and now they're bringing in more troops? It would seem as though, I think from the Taliban's perspective, that the odds of the U.S. actually leaving Afghanistan as promised are getting slimmer and slimmer. So if that's the case, that might provoke them into taking some, let's say, preemptive action in trying to strike the United States before the U.S. has time to strike them while all this is going on. If the peace deal is truly dead, the Taliban might just want to, do like the Japanese did at Pearl Harbor and, draw first blood because they know that the Americans want to fight. That's a part of the World War II story that is, hardly taught in the United States. But FDR very much wanted to go to war with Japan, and he was egging them on for quite a while. That's, the reason why Japan had to attack Pearl Harbor, not to get too off on a tangent, was because of FDR's sanctions on Japan, which prevented them from buying oil from the United States. And so Japan said, well, we need to get oil from somewhere, so I guess we'll invade Indonesia, the Dutch East Indies, Indonesia. But in order to, get to Indonesia, we need to have somewhere to land our planes in between Japan and Indonesia, or else we can't bomb, Jakarta, or I assume Jakarta was still the Dutch capital back then. And so the Japanese decided that, well, the only way to do this now is if we conquer the Philippines. And so, that's what led to Japan declaring war in the United States, because the FDR sanctioned them. They knew that, the Americans wanted a war, so they started a war. And then the U.S. and Roosevelt, they used that not only as justification to throw all Asians into concentration camps in the United States. But they also, where it had this great narrative about how, oh my gosh, we were stabbed in the back by our good buddies, Japan, the Japanese, who just, they said they wanted to be our friends, but then they come and they bomb our entire Pacific Fleet. And then this was a great justification for the U.S. to get involved in a war that World War II that the American people largely did not want to get involved in. This is actually the time where the term America First was first coined. It was the people who wanted to put America first and not get involved in the affairs of the rest of the world by fighting a second world war. And it was precisely because the American regime was able to lure their prospective enemies into attacking them first, or at least first publicly, striking the first physical blow, that they were able to get the American people on board for that war. And so, to me, I think that we have a very, very high risk of the U.S. establishment. If you look at the people, for example, who are running the Biden regime, the Biden administration, these are not people who want to get out of Afghanistan. These are people who have been around in Washington for the entire time the Afghan war's been fought, and they've never wanted to get out of Afghanistan before. And so I think that if they got an opportunity to stay in Afghanistan because there was some incident where the Taliban, broke the peace by, I don't know, setting off some kind of truck bomb outside of Bagram Air Base or something, they would be all too happy to use that to try and propagandize the American people into believing, oh my gosh, we gotta, not only stay in Afghanistan, we gotta send 10 times more troops than we already have there. And so you still want to watch out for that. But there's one more element that I had not addressed in the past, which also concerns me about the idea of an Afghan pullout, and that is what of all of the mercenaries that the United States employs in Afghanistan. There are more U.S. contractors, or there are more contractors of the U.S. military in Afghanistan than there are U.S. troops. I believe there have also been more U.S. contractors killed in Afghanistan than, active duty U.S. troops. And so even if Biden pulls out, the U.S. troops, which number only 2,500, and they could still prosecute the war by leaving all the contractors there and having them do, the U.S.'s bidding. So the war might continue. It just, would be outsourced or subcontracted out to these mercenaries. I mean, I believe the administration has only gone as far as to say that the U.S. contractors will be coming home with the U.S. troops. So I guess, these guys who are American veterans of the war on terror who go and join, these groups like Blackwater, which, it's not called Blackwater anymore, but that sort of thing, those guys will be coming back home. But, if you hire a bunch of, Sudanese guys, with AR-10s, to fly, to take the slow boat over to Afghanistan, or fly in or whatever, and go and fight the Taliban in the hills, those guys are going to stay? I mean, I guarantee you the CIA isn't leaving. The CIA has been in Afghanistan since the late 1970s. They've had a constant presence there, and they've been, meddling and, been engaged in acts of war in that country for that entire time. The CIA has made it their mission to keep Afghanistan perpetually in war. They've certainly done nothing to try and bring peace in Afghanistan. It's a pretty volatile place anyway. They don't need the CIA's help in, making it more violent. So all in all, I'm still pretty pessimistic about Afghanistan. I tried to be optimistic under Trump because there was hope with Khalilzad, with negotiating the deal. I said, hey, the deal's going on. Khalilzad's an old school neocon, and he, he's on board with this. I mean, it seems like, there might be something that, if even a neocon like Khalilzad is willing to, negotiate on this sort of thing and try and just get the guys out of Afghanistan. He says, you know what, it's over, we're done. Maybe there's some hope. And then the deal came, and it was great. It was great to see. It was just, hey, we're leaving. That's it. And don't shoot us while we're on the way out. Play nice, and we're not going to meddle in your business anymore. And it was a wonderful thing to see. But then, it just the date was for after Trump was out of office, and so there was no way that he could enforce it. And it's his fault. He should have put the date before he left office. It should have made something like, hey, if you wanted to be political about it, make it November or October. Make it not, it wouldn't be a surprise, but an October surprise. Hey, all the troops are home, just in time to vote for Donald Trump. Would have been politically smart on his part, but he chose not to. He didn't care enough. It's as simple as that. And until we know more information, that's about all I have to say about Afghanistan.